Good day, it's Peter Temple coming at you on June the 13th, 2026 from New Earth Rising. And this is pretty well the final calendar I'm going to give you. Now, I have to apologize. I kind of disappeared for a little more than a month. Many of us right now are going through a healing process, and that's been going on Earth for pretty well that amount of time, about a month or so. And I've been going through a change in my body, it looks like, from carbon-based to crystalline. And what they have to do is they have to cleanse your body, and that ends up to this huge detox with all kinds of crap coming out of all of your pores, and it can be very painful. And so that has really slowed me down, but and you're welcome for that lovely visual that you'll probably not be able to get rid of. But it keeps you up at night. I haven't, there's a period where I hadn't slept for 6 days, and so it's been tough to get at these calendars, so I apologize for going missing, but this is my last one. It's pretty obvious where we are. And this being the 13th is King Charles' birthday. Here we are today. Right here on the 13th. And this is my little today in green. Let's see what else I need to tell you. The scare event is we expected it back in here. I think it's probably sometime in this next week, but it sort of hasn't shown up yet. And I think that would include the Statue of Liberty buildings. I put that in a couple of places down in here, but I'll go through that as we go. The green background here is where I think, can't be totally sure, but I believe that that's the emergency broadcast system. This is 10 days. And there's some things happening during it. I know the first 3 days are going to be the important days, and then they may relax it a bit, so I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Let's go back to Orthodox Pentecost, which was really kind of our Easter what would I call that? Easter flag, if you want. And that was on the 31st of March on the Gregorian calendar. So that's back a bit. We're on the 13th of June right now in the Gregorian. All the red dates on here, you see them along in here, are the Julian calendar, which is 13 days, I've gone through this before, 13 days later than the Gregorian calendar. And those two calendars have to end up getting back together again to the same date. And there's a difference of 13 days between the two calendars. Okay, so that's the 13 that we know has to come out of the calendar to shore that all up and make it make sense. So we had a golden ticket, and the golden ticket is this graphic here that was given to us a long time. It's on the 19th. It's got a date of the 19th on it here, and it's also all about 1776 and a big 17 on it, and the storm. So we've got another one of these. We had one back in here. We have another one down here, which is in about a week, and that is on the 19th, again, on the Gregorian calendar. And that there's also a 19th down here on July the 2nd on the Gregorian, and so it's possible, but I can't really see this happening, that we would have a golden ticket here and then start the well, you would think it would be RV or something, and I think that probably relates to this, but I'm just not sure how they're using this, or if this one is real or this one is real, but I put in everything I can in here to give you an idea as to where we are. So we'll just have to see how this pans out, because boy, they're not giving out any information. We have to glean it from all of the clues that we get, because the military puts out bogus information as well. Because if we had the right information, then you can count on the enemy eventually getting the right information, and they won't let that happen. So nothing escapes the white hats. Let's see, we had good old Axel Vasa, who is here with his 5665 1111. That's the way I took it to be right from the beginning. And I put in the markers for the 11/11s. Like this is on the Julian calendar, 220. Well, you get rid of the 0 and you have an 11/11, a 2 and a 2. Then you go over here to, that was on the 2nd of June on the Gregorian calendar. These are the These are the Gregorian numbers at the top here. Then there was another one on 222. You take the 22, for example, but that's got more. That's actually 6 ones. So that might be overdoing it. These haven't come to fruition. There was another one down here on the 11th, which we just passed. And that one didn't really do anything either. It was also the start of the World Cup for Mexico. So that was just 2 days ago. All right, so that's important. Let's go back in here. This is June the 5th, where I thought we were going to have a major change, and we did, but it didn't really show up on the calendar. So that's leading into the last segment here. And in fact, today, with King Charles on the 13th, they're saying we're in phase 3, the final phase 3. We have one more phase to go for. There is no phase, or no step is what they put in some of the intel that we get. There is no step 5. So we are at the end. And I would say that step 4 is probably the EBS. Okay? Scare event, as I said, hasn't come to fruition yet that I can see, unless they consider what went on with Iran to be that. So I've left this up here. Then we had some rolling blackouts, which I believe set up Starlink, but we don't know that either yet. So, I left that in here. That would have been on the 10th of the month, June the 10th. Another Axel Vasa here. This was also 11/3. 11/3 to me indicates the military. And so this was 3/11s. This is 3/11 up in here. So June the 11th would be 3/11 if you mirror it, and 11, and so you get 11/3. So that I thought might be military. I think the military is more likely after this weekend, which is going to be a big weekend. The FIFA World Cup started on the 11th, and that was the opening ceremony in Mexico. There aren't any games yet. That's soccer, of course, and there aren't any games until the 15th, which is Monday. Until the 14th, I believe. First match is on the 14th. That's right here. So King Charles has his birthday today. I don't know whether that is signaling the demise of King Charles. That would be today. Would it happen on his birthday? Maybe, if they're going to have fun with it. But I'm not totally sure about that. I think it's going to be maybe the day before Trump takes off. So maybe it could even be Monday. But we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, this is a major day, King Charles' birthday. They're celebrating it in the UK. Then we get to Flag Day, which is the 14th. Now, this is a huge day. This is going to be on Sunday. It's got a new moon here. It's got this little graphic, which is the 3.14 full circle, and I've explained that a number of times, wherein that's pi. And so pi is the diameter of a circle, from one side to the other, times 3.14 will give you the circumference of the circle, right? That's the circumference. It gives you the length of it. So that is related to full circle. We've come full circle. They announced today Trump announced today that his job was done. The whole thing is done. We're done. So Flag Day, what this has to do with, that we have a big structure. Oh, let me do one more thing first. We've got this graphic associated with it as well. That's the mountains, because this is the 14th. So you got to pay attention to that, because that's so it begins. We have this from 1, 2, 3, then you get 4 to 13 days. All right, so it begins, and then you get the 14 inside this heart, and that is the finishing up of so it begins. So this is a big marker, and it happens here on 314 as well, which which indicates a really big change. And the big change has to do with that structure in front of the White House. That one's put up, and it may not be what you think it is, but it's part of a huge ritual. This weekend is going to be the taking down, finally, of the maritime law system, the present court system, which is the cabal, and it is totally corrupt, the entire system. I've been fighting this thing for 3 years, and I have an international criminal court case in the works, and of course that will be tried in common law, which will follow this, and that's because the courts. This is how corrupt it is. I mean, I'm a whistleblower. They didn't like me, and so what they did was they actually fabricated a court case that does not exist, hired 4 cops and a bailiff who works for the guy that wanted to get the house to begin with. And they came and arrested me, which is kidnapping because they had no warrant. And I didn't know it at the time. This just kind of went on. So they threw me out of my house. They evicted me, basically put me on the street. And so I've had to be in other places, other people's houses for about 1.5 years. So that's going on. So I have that one. We're going to try that in common law coming up probably beginning in July, or maybe because they still have to train people in common law. So this is the big changeover and a major deal. So what's going on? They're going to play a UFC match between 2 fighters on sovereign land, which is in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House. And that is a ritual that has to take place in order to move out of maritime law. So what they're doing, the White Hats, is actually using the information or the rituals or whatever you want to call it against the cabal. It's their ritual, and they're using it to take down the maritime court system. So that's going to happen this weekend. Thank goodness they're gone. And then we move on, and so that's going to be a big deal. I don't know what Trump is going to do, but following that the next day, I think we have the market top, because the market top is right there, or it could be a little bit later, but I think it's the beginning of this next week. This 3 days, the 15th to the 17th, Trump travels to France because he's going to be at the G7 meeting. Okay, so from the 15th to the 17th at the G7, and that's in France, so he will have left the country. Either he was going to get arrested. I think he gets arrested after he comes back, after the EBS, Emergency Broadcast System, where the world shuts down for 10 days, and we do the Great Awakening. I think he's going to go away for this period, and we're probably going to have the scare event in here, and then that will bring down that will cause the emergency broadcast system, and then everybody has to stand down. Politicians, any kind of elected official, the courts, and law enforcement. Everything has to shut down, and the military will be in charge. Okay, so with this Flag Day, I believe that the military will come in right after that. Maybe it's the market top, or maybe it's when Trump leaves. I'm not sure exactly how the military comes in now. I thought he might get arrested, and then, of course, the military would come in, but I think it's going to be later on. The military really has to be in sometime this week, leading up to what I believe the emergency broadcast system is. So here's 15, 16, 17. The G7 is the big deal in France. The other big deal is the RV, of course, or the distribution of funds to humanitarians. And that can't happen until the market top. So I've slotted that in on the 16th. So if the market top doesn't happen until the 16th, then this would end up being on the 17th, on the Wednesday, the RV. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think it's earlier in the week. That's the information that I'm getting as to what's happening. So you got the White House fight with the UFC that's going to happen, and be around for that. That'll be in the evening in front of the White House, and the crowd is going to be all military. And part of the ritual is the cheering of the population who will be able to watch this. And that gives the cabal the notice that everybody is for the big change, and they have to honor that. So that's going to be a major, the 14th. Got a lot of things pointing to it, and so that's what I'm expecting. Now, the first FIFA matches, and FIFA is not a clean organization. It is completely corrupt. So I think this is going to be exposure for the FIFA matches that are coming up. The first ones start on the 15th, on Monday. That is, that's going to happen in Dallas. And can you remember the old story of what begins in Dallas will end in Dallas? And here we have this license plate number, and of course the car that Kennedy was in on November the 2nd, 1963, which, boy, I remember very, very well. So there's the license plate. G stands for the seventh letter of the alphabet. So you have a 7 and a 7. You add them together, that's a 14. And then they have a 3, and you mirror it. And what you get is... 314. So this takes us back here to the full circle, pi. So all of this fits in there. And so this is the first matches, and so this tells me this is the ending. And then, of course, Trump goes to France, speaks in front of the G7 meeting, the 7 countries that form the G7, and will let them know what has transpired. Somewhere in here, I think King Charles goes down, but it could be closer to the end here before we get into the GSF. Not GSF, the EBS, Emergency Broadcast System. I've got the Emergency Broadcast System, could start on the 17th. A lot of people pointing to that. That's very possible. 3-4 on the Julian, 17th of June on the Gregorian calendar. So I put in the Statue of Liberty 34 buildings in here, and this actually could constitute a day of black, because we do have to have a blackout. This is another golden ticket. It's on the 19th, which would suggest that something big is going to happen after it. Now, the palindromes start. There's 2 things here. 217 I've had that wake me up at 217. This is my downloads from Source, or from my guardian angels. I don't know, what do we have? 15 times at least on that exact minute at night. 2:17, so just 17 minutes after 2 o'clock. Or I would also get 1:27. 1 o'clock, 27 minutes after 1 o'clock. Those 2 kept interacting. Well, this date on the Julian calendar is 3/7, June the 7th. So this would be 3, add the 2 and the 1, and 7. So that relates to this. I don't have a 217 anywhere in here. So here's another one where they've kind of covered it off. So I've put this in as the start. Now the palindrome start. The palindrome is this. Palindrome is where you get a series of dates, and you can count them forward and backwards, and they mean the same thing. So 6/2, 6/20/26 can be 6/20/26. So forward and backwards means the same thing. We have 10 days of them coming up. Isn't that interesting? And so it seems to me that would be the obvious place to slot in the emergency broadcast system. And that's what I've done here with the 217 and with the golden ticket on the 19th. Sort of is pointing to something very big. And so that's what I think is happening there. And solstice follows. So that's summer solstice on the Sunday. Here's the Saturday, the Sunday, 3/8, and the emergency broadcast system right now. Right in the middle of that palindrome is the 666 date. So you can go look over here, and it would be 666. And that's the 6-6 number that you all know quite well from the Cabal. And so that would suggest that that's right. It's right in the middle. It's the fifth day, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we'll see what happens with those. All right. Could be wrong, but there's also a huge rally on 666. And that suggests to me that the EBS, the main part of it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, may just be, this may start in the evening here on the Saturday. The emergency broadcast system is supposed to start in the UK and then go to the east around the world by time zone. So, in fact, we wouldn't probably see it until solstice, almost 24 hours later in North America. Then you have the emergency broadcast. So there's the huge rally. It's also an 11/3 date, okay, on the Julian calendar. 3/11 mirrored, which would suggest military. So maybe the military doesn't come into there, but the military's got to come in somewhere in here, really, before we shut down. And then the RV has to come in, I think, after the market top, but I'm not quite sure when the market top. I think it's the beginning of this week. So we know the RV is coming in this week sometime. All right, so get ready for that. And then it just follows, and I've always said this, you have the RV first. Well, first of all, the market comes down, then you have the RV, and then you have the emergency broadcast system. So it's all in the same order that I've been suggesting for quite some time. Then I wrote in down here that the day before the end of the emergency broadcast system, day 9, is actually Ides of March because it's 3/15, and you know that that's March the 15th on the old calendar, and so that would, and this is the Julian calendar here, so we may get the buildings coming down then. So I've got the buildings possible here, and those are the two big days that it seems to me the buildings would come down. And that would be the Ides of March, leading into a full moon here. And we know CERN is going to be shut down for good on that date, the 29th. All right, that's Gregorian, 29th. 30th of the month is the following day. And then we're into July, and there's July the 4th, Independence Day. And that's our freedom. Folks, that's it. The ending is here. I think I've pretty well covered everything off in this calendar, and I'm going to get it up as soon as I can here so that you can review it, and we'll see what happens. It's watching time. This is going to be biblical. It really is. So the big day to watch in all of this is to prove this calendar is the 14th, which is tomorrow, Sunday. And you want to be there for the match and to see what happens after that, because it's going to be something to remember, that's for sure. And so there's your calendar as far as I can make out. Again, apologies for not being around the last month. It's been very difficult. And I hope that anybody else that has to go through this body change can do it in the medbed situation where you wouldn't feel the pain, but it was been tough. I'm much better now, so not to worry. And my voice had gone, and you know, all that kind of crap. Anyway, and all that kind of crap was really a description of what was going on. So let's see this thing play out. Finally, we are going to have one heck of an amazing life once we get to the 4th. And the other thing is, the Trump leaving and going to France, there was the story that he would be out when all of this bad stuff happened. So I'm thinking, you know, Statue of Liberty buildings, and then he would come back and the world would be a different place. So he could come back in here for July the 1st, you know, that area, the 30th, or he could come back on Independence Day. I would think he would be back ahead of this, but maybe he comes back on Independence Day. There's a lot of talk about him having to leave the movie, and he may get arrested, but I think that's probably the plan. They'll do that at the end, and that would be the final part of Phase 4. And remember, there is no Phase 5. So that's the story for now. Good luck. Enjoy the final stage of the movie, and this is the big kickoff happening this weekend.